Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show number 49. Today's topic is General Scout discussion, and I'm joined by Lex. Say hello, Lex.
Hello, people.
Joined by Joshua as well. Say hello, Josh.
Hey guys.
So, on today's show, we're going to talk about the Scouts in general, different roles they may take upon, things we might like to see in general for Scouts, and see where we go and end up with. So, we have the Ranger, the Monk, the Rogue, and we know the Bard is incoming at some point in time. So we have basically 4 different types of Scout class, if you like. We have the Ranger that can take on a ranged and melee DPS kind of role. We have the Assassin that's going to basically, or your Rogue that's basically going to be pure sneakiness and stealth DPS mainly, I'm presuming. And we have our Monk, which I think is going to be more of the martial arts kind of DPS scout. And then we have the Bard, who's going to basically be putting out some lovely tunes to help the group with buffs and debuffs, etc. So let's go talk about these 4 different classes in general, and how we can see them mixing in groups and working together, and looking at them from different viewpoints. So let's start with you, Josh. What's your first take on these 3 classes in general?
Well, I like the differences between the classes. They're distinctive, which is great for everybody to make choices up front. I'm also quite curious to know how Pantheon is going to have their twist in these type of classes ultimately. Mm-hmm. And how do they define them from the other MMOs out there in today's world?
Nice. Lex, what about you?
Well, I'm a big fan of everybody having their specific role. I know it might be the old timer in me, but I kind of like the idea of, if I make a Ranger, my play style is not going to be the same as if I play a Rogue or a Monk or a Bard, kind of thing. I would like to see that, like, VR really kind of pushes that just a little further. Like, it's not just the same, but with a little twist. Like, I don't want to see a Bard that can kind of do a lot of Rogue stuff, but he's got support songs. I want to see, like, full-blown, like, nothing like the Rogue. Make him his own little entity, kind of like how we saw in Vanguard. Every class felt distinctly unique. And I think especially in the case of the Scouts, where you're basically in one way, shape, or form melee DPS, you really got to mix this thing up so that you keep your DPSers, which usually bring up the vast majority of your population, just to keep them excited and give them something new.
Okay. So, talking about DPS, let's go into it a bit and see what we're going to expect from these 4 classes, DPS wise. Because obviously, Scouts are going to be the DPS class along with the mages as well. So we're going to have to rely on them. How can you see them playing in a group? Let's say we have a group of 6 and we've got a Monk, Ranger, Rogue, and possibly a Bard in the group with a tank and a healer. So how can you see these working together, and what would make them, uniquely different from one another?
Well, let's put it this way. I think that one thing that can really define the Ranger properly would be the different types of arrow types that it has. And what it actually can bring to the group as an elemental damage that it can do with its arrows. The Rogue itself with a lot of poison type of damage, and also bringing in different types of skills such as pick locks, disarm traps, and everything like that. It becomes more of a utility type of thing for dungeons, etc. Your Monk, I would say, very much a traditional type of Monk, where you have to deflect a lot, where you're having to do nerve damage to the enemies type of thing. So you just stats, so you weaken them in that regard. And then finally, your bard, nice debuffs and buffs, ultimately, to bring to the group. So yeah, I'm hoping to see something like that in the way of the rogues type of thing, or the scout side.
So where can we see the bard basically, fit in the group of scouts? Because we know the ranger's going to be doing DPS, we know the monk's going to be doing damage, DPS as well, and we know the rogue's definitely going to be doing DPS. So where do we see the bard come in? Traditionally, most bards that I've come to know, especially in EverQuest 2, they can dish out a good amount of DPS, but their main role is to support the group, either by giving beneficial buffs towards the group, or giving out buffs against reducing armor and slowing the monsters, and putting dots on them or timers that basically slow them down, etc. So where can we see the bard come into here in the role of the scout?
Well, personally, I know people are going to start booing and throwing tomatoes at the screen. I think EverQuest 2 got the bards wrong. Horribly wrong. Because they're basically rogues with songs. Right? Instead of, they just replaced some abilities with songs. That's all they did. In my opinion. I think EverQuest 1 got it very, very, very close to perfect. And I was not a bard player in the old days, so they were the character that they could fit any role if they needed to, but if you couldn't get one, it was okay. But there were certain situations where when you had a bard in your group, you're just like, oh my god, this is amazing! Whereas with my experience in EverQuest 2, even when the few raids that I had done, honestly, bards didn't really do a whole lot. I mean, I think the enchanters did more.
Yeah.
But
Sugar Kitty does have a point, and she comes up with the fact that bards do have a crowd control aspect to them. And I think that is something that maybe Pantheon should lean towards, that'll differentiate themselves from the other scouts.
Yeah. I would really love to see bards with crowd control.
So we know in general that in EverQuest, there used to be the pulling class. There was the class that would pull rather than the tank going to pull. How do you see it with the scouts? Would there be a class from the scouts that would be your desired puller for the group? Would you want to see something like that, or would you rather leave that to the tanks mainly, that they pull mainly, and certain mobs obviously you might need to have a distinctive class to pull? What's your take on that?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to EverQuest because I think they had it pretty spot on. Like a rogue or a thief style doesn't really make a good puller. They had nothing to really just control the situation, but their damage toe-to-toe, if someone else was keeping its attention, was top-notch. I mean, up until the years that I decided to retire, rogues were very respectable in terms of damage, even for the min-maxers. And the raiders, all of them. I don't want to see a rogue be a puller. I want them to be an actual scout where they just go ahead and they tell you what's up ahead with their stealth. I want them to be able to have virtually unlimited access, picking locked doors, finding traps, even just the false walls. I would love for them to be able to find that stuff through the perception system. With bards, because they have such flexibility, or at least back in the old EverQuest days, they were very, very accomplished pullers. They were good crowd controllers. They were very good buffers. They were very good debuffers. But the thing is that if you got a class that specialized in the role they were doing, they always did better than the bard. The bard just had the flexibility to do almost anything. And that being said, I wouldn't mind seeing a bard be thrown into the puller category. I would just like to see maybe a ranger and a monk go in there as well.
I also have another view on it. I think that with tanks, would be more of a group pulling type situation, with their shout, with their taunts, that type of thing. But when you're dealing with the likes of a ranger, single arrow type pulls, etc., could be a thing where if you want to actually limit the pulls that you want to do, the scout would be more suitable for that type of thing from a ranger point of view. I look at the monk as well, and with the weakness touch and things like that I might have had, it might be able to slow certain mobs that are starting to chase you, so that you can actually focus on part of the groups that you encounter, type of thing. So you're looking at weakness and slowing from the monk, just from its touching and it's, I don't know what they call the points that you can touch.
The pressure points.
Pressure points, exactly, yeah. So the monk might have an important role in that regard. It keeps the mobs weakened and that type of thing in a group. So yeah, I think definitely scouts have a point in pulling more of single type pulls rather than group pulls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Being a very seasoned tank, I'm not going to say I'm against tank pulling, but tanks have so much to do as it is. Why add something else to their job? They'll do in a pinch, but let's face it, you pull, even if you got a bow and arrow as a tank, you send that arrow flying, you honestly, unless you are really, really good, you don't know if you're going to get 1, if you're going to get 3, if you're going to get 6. You're just going to be like, oh, please, oh, please.
So one thing or two, something you guys brought up again was the disarming traps and lock picking and maybe picking chests and stuff like that. Anything you guys would like to see differently than what we've seen in previous games where it comes to rogues that could pick locks, etc.? Would you like to see some spice added to it? We talked about it.
I know someone's got a really great idea. I'm going to go with it.
All right. An idea early on that we were discussing is simply that when a rogue does pick a lock and it fails in it, maybe it could actually damage the items inside. A trap goes off and starts damaging the items, similar to when a tank tries to just bash a lock open on a chest, and it could damage the items inside. And then another good mechanic that might be suitable to this is that you have the crafter come in and be able to repair the stuff inside the chests so that you don't lose out on some of the good loot in there. So yeah, I think it's a good mechanic. Ultimately is the risk you have of damaging items inside a chest.
Yep. I really like that idea because, like, let's say there is a locked chest that does have some kind of loot in it. It's nice to have other options besides I have to have a lock picker. To say that a warrior can actually just bash that sucker open, because let's face it, a locked chest, you can bash that thing open, right? I mean, if someone's got a cedar chest at your house right now and lock's broke, what are you gonna do? Probably force it open or bash it open.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that the items inside have a chance to become damaged. And I really like bringing crafters in on this to the whole, well, if an item does get damaged, it's not that you're out loot, it's that you have to go find someone to repair it, or you have to repair it yourself in order to actually make use of it.
Yeah, basically it gets kind of like turned off. The item's there, the stats are all there, it's just that
right, you just can't use it.
You just can't.
It'll say unusable.
Yep.
It's damaged. It's broken or something.
That's pretty cool.
I like that. I really like that.
Exactly.
Because I mean, it's when I'm done adventuring or running my dungeons and stuff. I usually end my groups because someone's got to go. 9 times out of 10, it's not me. So I usually have another 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, 5 hours, whatever, extra time after my group disbands. Well, I know it sounds like a pain in the butt, but this gives me something to do when this group is done. Even if I've only got 30 minutes, that's 30 minutes that I'm still in the game and I'm actually doing something and I'm making a little bit of progress. But in the event that you have a rogue with you, that's like 100% chance that you're not going to damage items, because even if he fails, oh, geez, my lockpick broke. Well, it's not going to hurt the boots inside the box. No, your pick broke. If there's a trap, yeah, that makes sense. It might hurt something. So if he does open it, but he fails to detect or disarm the trap, that is a chance. But you still run that risk with a warrior as well.
Well, how would you go about it now? Let's go and say there's a magically locked chest. You won't be able to pry that one open. It's got a magic seal or something. So how would you like to see something be handled that way? What would you need there? What would you have to do? What would make that interesting as well to have? Because you've seen it again and again in multiple games.
This is where crafters come into it. This is where crafters come into it, where you have enchanted crafters, perhaps, that would enchant lockpicks and enchant items for the scout to use on magical chests. And that could be another aspect of the game that is needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, or you can even give casters skills that can detect magical enchantments on items.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the chest is glowing now, or it could be a perception thing for your casters. Oh wait, you're sensing magic from this box. Hey, don't open that yet. Let me try to dispel it.
Well, you're going to put your hand on it, you're going to get zapped, basically.
Yeah.
So,
say goodbye to your fingers.
What individual tweaks would you like to see towards these, these scout classes? Certain gimmicks that only they have, that give them a unique touch, or things that they should have, or what you would like to see, what you haven't seen before, or you might have seen but it hasn't been done quite right. Anything come to mind for the individual scout classes that you see, where you say, hey, this was a good idea, but it's it needs to be advanced, brought forward, or add this to it because it will make it really cool. I mean, there's some ideas in chat that have come up.
See, if I had my way, and let's just assume for a minute that the bard ends up being a little bit of a thief, because like I said, all I can really go on is the EverQuest 1 model, and so let's assume he can pick locks, detect traps, disarm traps, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I want a thief to be the #1 undisputed master of disarming traps, detecting traps, and unlocking stuff like that. That they have to be undisputed. The bard can do it, but they're not the master of it. That being said, I would also like the bard to be higher than a thief in terms of like finding hidden passageways, like false walls, stuff like that. And the sad thing is, this kind of leaves like the monk and the ranger out in the cold. But
well, you could give the ranger a tracking ability.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. And hello, Mr. Firesmith, I miss you, buddy. So rangers, you can get your track, but the fact that they're effective at almost any range makes the ranger a very, very appealing class to play. I'm a couple feet away. Well, I can still reach him with my bow. Oh, he's up in my face. Well, I can whack him with my weapons. Whatever. The monk, I think he would have to excel greatly at basically hand to hand, as almost anyone would expect. I think the debuff, if they added a debuff system to like pressure points, use that kind of line, I think that would really go a long way to evening out everybody's everyone's got their own little specialty. But one thing that I from Elder Scrolls and all that, one thing that I always loved was picking the locks. Even in Elder Scrolls Online, I find it fun. It's a tiny little mini game. It's completely pointless, but it's fun, and it makes lock picking seem like you have to pick the lock, not just, hey, I hit a button and maybe the random dice gods are gonna smile on me today. But I have played a rogue in EverQuest 1 and EverQuest 2 and all these other games, but lock picking always felt boring and pointless.
Well, the thing was that basically most of the time the items in those suggested chests were useless, or there was hardly any value to it, and plus, you know, basically, if you didn't have a rogue around, there was nothing you could do with the chest. You could either go onto the onto their web store and buy yourself some pick locking keys for cash, which that's something we don't want to see. You know, if you give people options,
a reason to do it,
options to break open the chest, then I can see lock picking and stuff like that come back into the game and be of value. But again, there they have to make it where it's actually worth it.
Yeah, so I mean, like in EverQuest 1, I know there's some people out there that have probably played rogues in EverQuest 1. This might have been the same case in EverQuest 2. I don't remember anymore. But as a rogue, you would level up your lockpicking by going to a dungeon or basically just a place with a locked door and just sit there for hours just unlocking that stupid door. And for what? For one quest, 30 levels down the line. And I was just like, really? All that work for one little thing? Doesn't seem worth it.
Sathras just came up with a cool idea that I'm going to go and kind of twist upon. Maybe bards could tell the story of magic items and better unlock things about it. That's another thing that you could technically do. Pipe of Hamlet. You know, basically the bard plays a magical tune that basically over time starts unlocking this chest.
Well, I think what he might actually be talking about is like, how about something like this? You get a drop, okay? It's a magic sword. That's all you know. It's a magic sword, okay? The bard can actually, because he's a storyteller, he's a lore keeper kind of idea. It's just what bards are. They kind of just roam around and know things.
No, what I'm saying, Nick, that's where I got the idea from.
I know.
From that.
Yeah, I know.
Basically,
I know.
Might be something I could do.
He can kind of identify the unlocked potential of a magic item, and then a crafter can unlock it.
Well, I would,
cool.
Yeah, I think that's cool, but I'd elaborate on that. I would still make items magical and have various stats to them, but a bard should have a chance of adding an extra stat onto it depending on their skill. So they create, they've got a song that can unlock a greater power within the weapon.
Right. So we know for a fact that crafters are going to be able to increase the power of almost any item. So this means we would have 2 levels of unlocking. I would be personally worried that if the stats aren't balanced correctly, you could find yourself with an overwhelming amount of stats on items very quickly.
It could be a secondary stat though, Lex. It could be like safe falling. Maybe extra 5% to safe falling.
You mean passive skills too?
Yeah, why not? So instead of stuff that overpowers the game, you have things that might better, like a rogue's lockpicking ability, for instance, on a dagger that he finds, and that unlocks that portion of it, or a monk's dead fist type of thing, or anything like that, any secondary type of thing. It doesn't have to overpower the game, but it is fun stuff that will definitely benefit a group going forward. For instance,
right. If they made that an uncommon or rare occurrence, I think that would be really neat. Definitely something worth pursuing, or at least talking about in a group meeting at VR. Just to say it. I mean, it's something new. It's something neat. I mean, I think it's worth a look. My biggest fear is that we're going to run into the whole thing of the Scout of the Month. You know, the monk's currently the #1 DPS, but
that's where
everyone rolls a monk. You know, and no one realizes that the thief or rogue, whatever it's called, might actually be #2, but have much more potential.
That's why basically, you know, the idea of the AA system and, you know, the flavor of the month, etc., is something they definitely have to work on. You know, like I've been talking about this, you know, almost in every show when we talk about a class, is giving you different options and making it still worthwhile for you going down path A, B, or C. dependent on your class, and it shouldn't be something that makes you obsolete towards, hey, you've gone down path A as a ranger, that's the wrong path to go down. No, that's how he wants to play that ranger. That's how he is gone. Right. And that's something that I think that should be pursued because, like I said, Flavor of the Month, I'm going to be honest, I'm fed up with it. I'm fed up with the Flavor of the Month.
Same.
It's boring. It comes to a point where you've reached your max level, you've reached all your items, you've done everything. Now you're looking at your skilling, you're trying to get yourself up to the top notch, and you go down that set path because everybody's doing it because that's the Flavor of the Month. It's boring. Make my class unique.
If VR can basically do a testing group, you get your tank, your healer, and then fill the rest with scouts, and everything works fine, and everything complements each other. That's when you've got a very good balance of abilities and skills and everything. That way, you could say we have a thief or a rogue, because I always get those two mixed up in whatever game I'm thinking of. Then we have a monk, and while they're both technically DPSers, and they're both melee DPSers, primarily anyway, they still complement each other, so it's not like I should choose this over that. It's get them both because they work great, and it should be the same with any of them.
I just kind of lost my track here. I had something. Gear-wise, in some games, there's different sets of gear that you can basically wear. Would you like to see something similar for scouts? A higher DPS gear, a higher mitigation gear, etc. Would you like to see something like that? We know there's going to be situational gear. That's a given.
Right.
But would you like to see different ways of obtaining gear and building on your class dependent on what kind of gear you would obtain? Go for the max DPS gear or go for more of a defensive gear? Would you like to see something like that, or is that something that you think is why most games suck?
I would say the situational gear is a good thing.
Yeah.
It forces you to prep. My problem that I have is an overabundance of situational gear or required gear for different areas, and a very minimal or poorly designed inventory system. That's they have to be they have to work together. If you're going to give us lots of situational gear, let's say like resist gear, and there's 6 different types of resists, and you go into a dungeon where each boss has a different type of resist type that you have to stack. Just as an example, out of the top of my head, that means I have to carry full resist sets to cap out my resist if I'm a raider for 6 different things, which means my inventory system has to be very, very well designed. Otherwise, I'm going to get frustrated, and I'm just going to be like, you know what? I don't care. I'm not going to bother. Let's go.
No, you're 100% right. I think that ultimately, I think everybody will try and go for all type of resist type gear, so you can get all of that done. I mean, I don't know if it'll even have that in the game to start with, but yeah, I think that there has to be some sort of a system where you can click a button and you can throw on a poison resist set of armor.
A lot of games have adapted and added a lot of new systems. The current system currently out there in EverQuest 2 is the wardrobe system, for instance, where you can set up 6 different wardrobes, or 12 I think it is. You can have up to 12 slots where you set up wardrobes, and boom, that's it. You can even add I think 3 different types of gear that you're going to wear. So you can just basically you click on the button. Those are dynamics systems that I think would benefit all of us, because it is a pain in the butt when you're sitting there and you have to have your bags, and you got like 2 bags full of gear, and you got to go through it because you haven't played for a while. You log back in, you go through the gear, you got to check which one's which and everything. So having kind of systems for your inventory where you can easily manage that is definitely something that I think that us in general would like to see. It's not it's not something that's unbalancing the game if you can organize quicker and stuff like that. It's got nothing to do with cheating or anything. It's just a cosmetic helper, basically.
But also encumbrance then boils down to encumbrance as well. Your weight. Can you actually carry around 4 or 5 sets of armor at the end of the day, going into a zone.
I'm a tank. Can I actually pick up and carry 6 suits of armor? No.
Nope.
Yeah.
But I mean, still. But I mean, in terms of situational gear for scouts only, even as a DPSer, because I had those getaway characters where no one knew they were, and they were all DPSers. Situational gear is still great for them because, say you fight, I don't know, we're just gonna say a golem that does a frontal just cleave where it hits everything in front of him in a cone, which means he does nothing from behind more often than not. Which means I can sacrifice survivability as a scout to maximize my output, my damage output.
I mean, Dark's idea that we talked about last time as well, or not last time, but a while back, is with the having multiple sets of gear, having sockets with runestones and stuff like that. That basically make that your situation. I think that is most probably the easiest and best choice to go down. So you have like a little bag of runestones that have different situational abilities, rather than having 10 different sets of breastplates and legs and this, that, and the other that have all these different resists. You could use these runestones basically. And
in terms of stuff like that, we're also forgetting that that mana crystal or the climate crystal or whatever they call it. I don't remember. I mean, who knows what that's going to do down the line? It could help mitigate the amount of complexity in that specific situation. So instead of saying I have to, resocket all my gear, you could go with just, say there's 3 sockets, you go a poison resist, a fire resist, and an ice resist, and then I'll slap my little crystal on that gets the rest of them. I mean, we really don't know, but still, in terms of scout, to try to keep things on the scout path, and I know it's weird. It's like Twilight Day today because Yarnilla's losing his train of thought, and I'm trying to keep us on track.
Right. So one thing I do want to bring up though, Lex.
Yes.
One talking point that I think a lot of people aren't going to agree with us or might have a different opinion is scouts and tanking.
Absolutely not.
I personally feel that scouts should not be able to tank regardless. That's the tank's role. That's what the tank does.
Yeah.
He can have a higher mitigation than obviously a mage or a healing class, etc. But he should not be able to tank regardless. That's the tank's job.
Now, we're going to... It's unavoidable. We're going to see like a level 50... level 50 wizard and a level 10 zone. Nothing's going to be able to kill him.
Exactly.
Even though he's basically wearing a tissue paper, kind of thing, But as terms of like threat generation and mitigation and avoidance, the only time I want scouts to actually have higher avoidance or mitigation or survivability is for their own sake and not for the groups.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, in EverQuest 2, I had my monk, and I loved being an off-tank type of situation.
That's a different thing, though. The monk in EverQuest 2 was a tank.
100%. But I do agree that the monk in Pantheon should be more of a DPS avoidance type of guy, and shouldn't be in a situation where he tanks. Even in EverQuest 2 now, they've taken away they've made strike through a thing where I know they've had it for a long time, but the monk is even weaker going into a tanking situation because the chance of being one-shotted is real.
And the thing is, if you look at a monk though in general, they're not ones to tank though. They're highly disciplined, and they have they're balanced with their souls and everything. They wouldn't technically want to tank. They try to disarm you and knock you out fast and get you off your feet as soon as possible. They're not one to stand there and go into a battle of the best and stand there and go, hey, I'm going to be a tank. I'm going to go and beat you down and stand firm and everything. So I'm glad that the monk got put into the scout area where it should be. That's it always kind of boggled my mind seeing that the monk in EverQuest 2 was put there up there with the tanks. The idea was interesting, having a avoidance tank. The idea was interesting, but it never worked, especially with the FD, because it got taken too far. You know, they would just run through the zone, FD at the end boss or whatever, and do this and do that, and they would like completely overpowered at some point, and it made no sense.
Right. See, and coming from a tanking background, I'm not saying I don't want tanks, or I don't want scouts or monks to be able to be off tanks. I'm not saying that at all. I welcome that. That gives me a chance to work with another archetype, you know, and I know a lot of people think that it's selfish because as a tank, I'm like, I don't need someone to take my job, you know, because I want to do my job. There's enough bad tanks out there that when people say don't get this warrior because all warrior tanks are bad, get this monk who can avoid everything and keep it on damage. That really bugs me. Yeah. Because now people are assuming I'm a bad warrior because all these other people have been bad warriors, but the monk is so easy that a 4-year-old slapping the keyboard could do it, so they still think I'm bad? Why? But anyway, it's just this thing where, you know, this is your specialty, get out of mine kind of thing. You know, and I'm not even going to start on avoidance tanking. I'm not even going to start there because that's a rant and a half for me. But I mean, I'm not saying that, hey, we can add the monk or the thief or the ranger can't hold it for a while. I'm all for that. Absolutely.
Yeah. In a safety type of situation, save the group type of thing before to get the tank back up. Sure, few seconds of avoidance and dodging and that type of thing. But certainly not being somebody relied on to run through a dungeon, that's for sure.
So let's talk about one thing that monks in generally have, FD, Faint Death. How would you like to see that for the Scout Monk, if at all it's going to be in-game for the class? Do you want to see it be a FD that he can singly cast on anybody in the group? Would you like to see a group FD? Would you like to see FD only for that class itself? What's your take on that, guys?
Only for himself.
Definitely for a monk.
Only for himself, because it would take discipline to make yourself appear dead.
Exactly.
But you also have to put it on a short duration, like 2 minutes max. Because hold your breath. You know, that you got to look dead. Hold your breath. You know, granted they could go 5 minutes, and I really wouldn't care on the actual details. But it always bugged me when this, like. And I'm going to come from my bad era of gaming, where a monk would FD, and they'd sit there FD for like 4 hours waiting for the mob that I'm camping.
Well, it was 12 hours, basically, you could sit and FD back in the day.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. None at all. With magic, you can get away with a lot, but with physical discipline, while it's possible that, yes, someone could hold their breath for, 7, 10, 15 minutes, theoretically, so I'm sure there's a record out there somewhere, not every single person is going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
No. Also, the one thing that we did see in their video is the very high areas you can do, and you can jump around, etc. A monk... Another ability a monk should have is be one of the only few classes that can safe fall great distances without hurting himself.
Because of the discipline with the body.
Discipline, exactly. So they could get to rare spots to get rare materials because of that. How they get out is another problem, but yeah, they should be able to do that.
FD is... It was a great idea in theory, but it caused a lot of problems in EverQuest 1 and EverQuest 2. It made tons of problems. Look at, for those of you that remember me talking about when I was a Necro, I was a scourge of my server. I was a grade A D-bag, all because of Feign Death. Feign Death facilitated me to do whatever I wanted, and nobody could stop me. While I'm saying it's nice to have that freedom in a game, we don't need that anymore. I don't need that anymore. because I don't want to slip back into that. I don't want to be a bastard anymore. I want to play and have fun with people, and Feign Death is one of the things that made me sit there and go, you can't stop me, so why won't I do it?
So
I think it's a great utility. It's got to be reined in quite a bit.
So let's talk a bit about the rogue and its poisons. How would you like to see that done? Josh, you're obviously playing an assassin in EverQuest 2, and maybe planning on playing a rogue in Pantheon. How would you like to see poisons affect your class?
Well, firstly, I think that there should be multiple types of poisons you can get. So your paralysis and your bleeding poisons, etc. So the rogue should be able to use a host of poisons on his blade, which no other class, maybe apart from a ranger, should be able to utilize to its full effect, type of thing. And yeah, I think that definitely that should be the key focus of a rogue, is being able to weaken the mobs, poison them, and kill them over time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my take on that.
Lex, what about you? Anything to add?
Sadly, I kind of want poisons to be almost like a collection game. Like, they don't necessarily have to be like going from like this damage over time to this one. I don't want them to be like massively different. Like, maybe this one does a little less damage but lasts longer or shorter time, versus this one does, similar, little less damage, but maybe it hits mana as well, or stamina or whatever. And because when you think of a rogue, you almost kind of start thinking about assassins when there's poisons involved. And if that's a tool of your trade, you tend to have a very robust collection.
Yeah.
Like, look at a hired gun. You see them in the movies. They zip up, or they unzip their suitcase, and there's like 15 different guns, and you're just like, they can get it done, kind of thing. I kind of want my rogues to feel like that, where it's like I look at my inventory or my poison interface and go, that one, yes, that one's calling my name. This will kill them.
Exactly.
It's almost like a connoisseur of poisons.
Yeah.
Instead of just, here's your dot line, here's your direct damage line, here's your snare line, tier 1 to 5. Whoop-de-freaking-do.
Exactly. But I do think that, again, crafting should play a big part in that. In terms of collecting, I think a lot of MMOs have done it over time, but it's basically the harvesting of rare plants to create certain rare poisons that the rogue would need. And you create a good line for that. So it's not original, but it certainly, I feel, should be in the game.
Yeah.
So let's go and talk about the Ranger. Monk, FD, Rogue with poisons. I personally like to see the Ranger have the ability to use different kinds of arrows. So like fire arrows, exploding arrows, piercing arrows, long range, short range arrows, etc. And that's the thing that he can do. Arrows in general, if anybody's got a bow, they can use the basic arrows, but the Ranger should have a more utility use of arrows, exploding, fire arrows, ice arrows, etc. Maybe magical arrows that he can get from the summoner that only he can use, or whatever, something like that. That's how I see it for the Ranger. What about you guys?
I'm going to be a little bit out there, and I know that they've got a big fat arrow on the picture that you have above there, but I would say other ranged items should also be usable by a ranger. That they can use to good effect and utilize. So it could be a ranger that can also use throwing items a lot better than if it comes down to a pinch. But ultimately, the damage that it does comes from the bow and the arrows and the different type of arrows that it has. I think also that it should be able to be the only class that can really get the most out of maybe your longbows. Certain classes might not be able to use certain types of bows, and they get to use things like longbows and being able to manipulate those bows to be able to do double damage type of situations as well.
You know, we talked about this on the Ranger class when we talked about him as well. You know, it's I always hear the word bow. Okay, you know, longbow, short bow. What about crossbow? That's one thing I really miss seeing when you have Ranger classes. I would love to see a Ranger be able to use a crossbow. There are some games out there that do it, but it's something that I think that, you know, if any class can use a crossbow, it would be the Ranger. And it gives a different effect as well, because it's almost like a rifle. It would have a more direct piercing shot. It would do a higher DPS because you're actually aiming with the crossbow rather than just pulling and trying to aim. You got it hold like this and you're going for it. So that's something I would definitely like to see, is the Ranger have the utility to use different bows as well.
Yeah, single-handed, one-handed bows. Type of thing. So it looks like
hand crossbows. I think that's more of the realm of the rogue, though.
Yeah, that's why I see
but
the rogue coming up.
Like, I can see the rogue. They say that he's going to be able to use crossbows. I could see a ranger using a standard crossbow, maybe even a heavy crossbow.
Yeah.
I could definitely see them using, you know, short bow, horn bow, long bow, all that good stuff. But there's a distinct split in the people that play Ranger. And one of them is, I want to melee like Dritz from Forgotten Realms. And the other side is, you know, I want to be a howitzer with 2 legs. You know, they want to be the archer. The sad thing is that if you go one way or the other, you lose half of your Rangers. And despite all the Ranger jokes out there, I have met some just phenomenal Rangers in my day that just, every time that they let loose an arrow, you watch the mob's hit points tick down. You're just like, oh my god. Meanwhile, 6 of us are beating on this thing and barely moving it. But I think with the specializations, there is room to keep everybody happy. If you want to be a melee ranger, so be it. Let them be a melee ranger. If they want to be that howitzer on 2 legs, then have them specialize, and so be it. But there are certain give and takes. A melee ranger is obviously only going to be good up close. So maybe he doesn't get access to the longbows or a heavy crossbow or something. Well, or he only has access to the smaller bows because he's more focused on his, you know,
melee
swords or whatever.
Situation.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah,
continue.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say the only drawback I could really see to being like the archer would be, and this comes from Guild Wars too, is certain bows don't work so effectively when you're close up. Like, say you're in a dungeon or you're running through Black Dagger Keep. You probably should. I mean, I could see someone using a short bow in the corridors, but I couldn't see someone using a long bow. It would get in the way.
Sure. Yeah, that is a good point. We must also think that the ranger is, because he's such a specialist at bows and that type of thing, he actually gets a lot more out of them than other classes would. So you might look at a tank or a rogue also using a bow, but they're just using it maybe 1 arrow every 10 seconds or whatever the case may be. Yet the ranger, because he's basically sleeps with the bow and whatever the case may be, can actually that he can fire off arrows every 3 seconds. So he fires off 3 arrows in the time that somebody lets off 1 arrow, ultimately. And even does more damage with that. So speed is also a factor when you're dealing with the bows, as well as more damage than other classes can do at range.
Yeah. So we've talked about the ranger and his little corner of the of Pantheon, of Terminus. We talked about the monk in his little corner. We talked about the rogue. So let's go and see what the bard. What would you like to see? Where would you put the bard? What would be his little thing that he has?
I know this is going to sound bad, but I would like to see the bard as the slot filler, no matter what slot, except tank or healer. So you need buffing, you need debuffing, you need you need damage, you need crowd control, you need, even if it's just downtime reduction, the bard is your guy. You'll fill it, Or if you just need that extra little boost, then that's the bard. It's kind of like this, because they're going with the what do you call it, the quatrinity. He can fit 2 of those slots. Yep. He's the only class that'll fill 2 of those slots. Support or I'm sorry, I'm going to call it utility. I'm going to call it utility. So I'm going to say utility or DPS. Granted, his DPS might not be up to snuff compared to the others, but he will make that up by helping everybody else do better.
Yeah, I agree. I think he boosts the team. That's his big thing, is that he boosts the team as a whole. He sits at the back with his zither, whatever musical instrument he has, and he demoralizes the enemy, buffs the group, and does various utility type things as a bard, which nobody else can do.
So let's talk about the attributes that generally all classes have, all races have, etc. We can obviously assume that agility is going to be, one of the main portions for scouts, having a higher agility, etc. What other things should come into effect, or should be of higher value to these, to the scout classes?
I think each one should have their own secondary attribute that is important. In EverQuest 1, bards, they were primarily charisma. Although, while everyone says charisma does so much for you, not really. Only for two instances that it would really matter. And that kind of bugged me. Whereas a warrior, strength and stamina and dex and agility, it all counted for something. With the bard, nothing really counted for anything because he had songs to make up the difference. So you just slap stuff on. Obviously, with your rogue and your monk, it's a little easier because with a monk, strength and dexterity are probably going to be huge. With a rogue, probably it's going to be dex and agility. I mean, because rogues are very agile, monks are agile as well, but they're also generally very physically fit. Your ranger, he's probably going to have the typical strength and probably dex, depending on whatever they want to bind archery skills to. But with the bard, I want to see something actually matter in terms of attributes.
Well, charisma is definitely up there. From a couple of aspects. Number one, it could be used in terms of your bartering and getting stuff cheaper. Ultimately, if it's just for himself or it's for some of the group or whatever the case may be. Number one, and number two, when he's learning his songs from the various NPCs. Could depend on the charisma and how locked he is in order to get into areas to learn the songs that he needs to learn at the end of the day. So charisma could be a major factor. And
basically, you could even see charisma being something as well where it's if he has a higher charisma, he's more... He doesn't have so much stage fright, so the song that he's going to play isn't going to fizzle that often, etc., or isn't going to completely fail when he's playing it, because his charisma is high. He's kind of he's self-aware, he's self-confident. He's shining out confidence as well. So that's where he can come in as well. His personal appeal towards people. He's not shy to go in front and go, hey, let's go and jam some bongos or grab a guitar and string a bit and everything. He'll just go out there and do it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
There was something in chat about how 6 bards should be a viable group. I want to address that. Just real quick here. No. But here's why. I'm not... And I love bards. I do. I love bards. I'm going to say no. But here's why. You take 6 of your favorite bands and play your favorite song. Play it as loud as you can. It's nothing but noise. You don't understand what anyone's singing. You can't hear anything. It's just noise. And if all 6 bands are playing the exact same song, it's still a great song, but it doesn't make it any better. You know.
Correct. Yeah.
So
that's the thing.
Let me just quickly bring up the disclaimer. Voice of Terminus have nothing to do with VR. We do not work for them. We're not paid by them to do the shows or anything like that. We're fans of the game. We're fans of the game, supporting them, waiting for this game to come out. Also here to entertain the community while we wait until we get into the different testing phases of the game itself. And yeah, that's the disclaimer.
And I just want to point out that, yes, we don't get paid because I'm really poor.
So let's talk about the appeal, the look of the individual classes compared to each other. So how do you see each class looking in comparison to one another? I personally, I'm going to start with the Ranger because I did play a Ranger back in my early days of EverQuest 2. I see the Ranger kind of like a hooded figure, has a long hood on. He's, you know, let's take Aragon, sitting in the back in a tavern, dark hood, you can hardly see his face, chain armor, maybe even leather. You can even, you know, wearing leather and stuff like that. I see him more of a mixed of hiding himself and but also giving that appeal of being somebody, you know, you look up to.
Correct.
Yeah. I would put him in the rogue class, the rogue side of things. Well, not Aragorn, sorry, but yeah. But I'd say from a monk point of view, I'd say they are very they're devout, and I would say they would also be able to have the hood and freeing your arms as well to be able to move quickly and defend and block and parry type of thing. So they must have a lot of freedom. So a set of robes is definitely in a monk's wear and look.
For me, a rogue just kind of screams the dark, shadowy figure in an alley. You know, he may not be the most formidable fighter, but he's not the guy you want to bump into on a dark night. You're just like, I'm gonna go this way, bye bye. Whereas like a monk on the opposite side is someone that, you know, you would look at him like if you saw not necessarily a bodybuilder, but someone who is still obviously very, very fit, where you're like, damn, you know, someone that you look at almost with a little bit of envy. He doesn't need flashy armor, so he wears probably like a lot of cloth or maybe some leather, but very flowy kind of thing, and he's kind of got that serene aura about him where you just look at him and go, huh, I'm all calm now, what's going on? But with the bard, obviously, you know, very, I'm always going to see a bard in plate. It's just the way I am, okay? Because of EverQuest. I blame EverQuest! I always see my bards in plate, and I love plate, so I'm happy with that. With Rangers, I kind of see them as being, you know, all earthy tones. Not necessarily someone who's intimidating, but someone who you look at them and it screams like they can take care of themselves.
Yeah.
We had that discussion already on plate armor and bards, and the arguments against it. I don't know if
my wife's over here going, Rangers.
I was just saying that we had that discussion on bards with plate armor, and how that actually shouldn't technically work. How's he going to strum a guitar with plate armor? Or beat on some drums with plate armor? You know, he's not going to be flexible, is he?
Technicalities.
Yeah, no, ain't gonna happen.
Maybe
Ain't gonna
half
happen,
plate.
dude. No.
Maybe a half plate.
I can see it now. What about you, Josh? Anything else you want to add to the classes? How they're going to look? How you picture them looking?
No, I just they definitely have to be different. I think, yeah, the more types of stuff to wear per class, the better.
So we have a question.
Well,
we have a question. We have a quick question in
Question.
chat. This is for you, Svarty. What about dual-wielding shields? Bards that just run around screaming.
Ours can do it. I don't care what they look like.
Dual-wield shields, man. I'm telling you, it's a thing. It's a thing.
That's
It's gonna happen.
That's a
It's
percussion
gonna
instrument.
happen. It's gonna happen.
That's their substitute for drums.
I just one day want to see a tombstone somewhere, and you got two shields crossed over, and this is where they say, this is where somebody tried this and they died.
Here lies Sparty. Never knew how to swing. I'm sorry, Sparty. I'm on your side. I think dual wielding shields is absolutely ridiculous. So, you know I'm on your side. I'm just teasing you. I wouldn't tease you, but I didn't like it.
So anything else, guys? Because I'm running a blank right
Well,
now.
well, just to stay on the shield thing, what are your guys' opinion of, say, like a rogue with a buckler? Just a small shield. Should they be viable? My wife said no, end of story, we're done.
I can see maybe a ranger having a buckler. If he's going to be using melee DPS, etc. I can see him maybe using a buckler at some point. But a rogue, no, I can't see that happening.
With EverQuest 2, I remember, I think it was a swashbuckler.
A swashy and...
Yeah, they could equip shields, but they could actually spec to tank, and that kind of really bugged me.
Yeah.
Even though I played one. But yeah, some games they do it, and I always thought it was weird. At least I'm not alone.
So
Orson says, it's historically accurate, but it actually doesn't fit in the video game world.
No,
it doesn't really. No.
It just doesn't make
It
sense.
doesn't feel.
It doesn't feel
like like the rogue that we're used to.
Yeah, because you picture him just being, cold-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
You just picture him,
An orc extends his hand in friendship, looks down, and there's a dagger in his heart.
Yeah.
Stupid rogues.
So I'm gonna quickly go and give you guys maybe a few seconds to think about maybe something you want to bring up, or even chat wants to bring up, and that we haven't talked about. Just been rambling on this entire last hour and 14 minutes or whatever. So I'm gonna bring up our current competition that's still going. Our Scarface competition. You can win a Watcher's Pledge. You can give it to a friend if you're already pledged. You can use it for yourself as an alternative alternative account. We want you to basically take a scar or draw a scar model and add a beard to it, and represent the face of Lexa somewhat. Be creative. You can do whatever you want. It just has to have a beard, and send us then your drawing,
all of my endearing
or whatever.
qualities.
Send it to our email address at giveaway@pantheon-vot.com. You got till the 31st, which is basically next Tuesday, to send us that, and then you can win yourselves a Watcher's Pledge. Just go crazy. Have your kids do it. If you've got kids, have your kids draw a scar picture, put a beard on it, and send it our way.
Yeah, bonus points if it's a purple crayon.
There you heard it. Bonus points. Lexa will give you bonus points for purple crayon. So, anything else, guys, that come to mind? Because I'm drawing a blank right now.
No, I think a lot of the stuff that we have been discussed in the various separate channels, for the monk, for the rogue, for the ranger, etc. But I think
if rogues they have like some sort of alchemy. I believe I don't have the webpage up. It'll be interesting to see if any other classes have their own. It sounds like it's going to be their own little crafting kind of thing, but it would like I don't even know where to begin, but it would be very interesting.
Yeah. Be interesting.
Right, then, so basically we've reached the end of this show, and next Thursday is the Necromancer show. The one that we'll be talking about the Necromancer next Thursday, and that will basically sum off.
You always gotta do the necro when I can't make it.
So we'll have the Necromancer next Thursday, and then we'll start going into the individual mechanics of the game itself. We'll talk a bit about maybe factions. We'll talk a bit about guilds. In individual shows, we'll talk about the perception system in detail, quests, dungeons, etc. So look forward to that, and we'll see you all. Maybe, I'm going to say maybe now on Tuesday. It depends on how much news we can gather and what's out there. It could also be that we only stream on Thursday next week. We'll have to see what news is out there. So we'll see you either on Tuesday or on Thursday. Look out for our Twitter for the announcements, or in Discord if you're in our Discord channel. And thanks for joining us, and have a great evening. And have a great weekend when it comes up.
Be safe, peoples.
Cheers, guys. Keep well.